look in the description below this video for a clickable version of these timestamps. Okay, so we are going to train on front desk processes today on our quick start training, and the first step is going to be to double click our Practice Studio logo here and go ahead and log in. If you watched our overview video, this will be the same process we did there. So username, password, which clinic we're logging into. If there is more than one, you can log in. Okay, so the first page that comes up, as we've discussed in the past, will be our home folder. If you're not familiar with the layout of Practice Studio and the different menu options and how to customize your home folder, I would certainly recommend the overview. The very first session of the Quick Start series, it goes through all of those details. The purpose of today's webinar specifically is to cover the day-to-day tasks that a front desk person would often need when using Practice Studio. So most of the training is likely going to focus in on the appointment scheduler, since that tends to be one of the areas where a front desk person lives. So we're going to go through a pretty extensive training, complete training there on how to utilize the appointment scheduler, add appointments, and so on. We're not so much going to cover the maintenance and setup of it, since that will typically already be done by the time the first front desk person enters the equation. But we will cover the use. We'll talk a little bit about appointment reminders, and then some of the other areas, widgets and things. So scanning of patient items into patient records, dealing with online portal messages that come in from patients, checking patients in and checking patients out, as well as printing some common reports and excuses that are often needed at the front desk. So the first thing we're going to go into is the appointment scheduler. Right here from my launcher widget, I have it as a shortcut, and if you are on the front desk, I would certainly recommend that. Makes it a little easier to get to. You can also get to it up here in the top left under the application menu, front desk, appointment scheduler. Okay, once you select that in either way, it's going to bring up the appointment scheduler. It is going to default it to today. We can change days by clicking on the appropriate day up here in the calendar to the left. Okay, and then obviously to the right is our grid, which will be eventually filled in with the appointments for that particular day. So our first focus of our training is to really go through the use of this appointment scheduler, how to add appointments, move them, so on, and the different features and functions within it. So the first step in dealing with the appointment scheduler is typically adding an appointment. Okay, the layout of this scheduler, so the different columns and things, have already been determined for us when the appointment scheduler was set up. So the columns are what we would call resources, and you can have as many resources as you want. You can also control, when you set up the appointment book, how many resources are visible. So right now my monitor is set down to a very low resolution, really lower than we would typically recommend for running Practice Studio, which is great for recording purposes and for the video, so the text is a little bit bigger and easier for you to see. When you're actually running on a newer modern monitor, you can typically fit more columns on your screen than you typically would here, as an example. So you can set that up. You can see at the very bottom, I actually have 5 columns on this book that will still function. So in these kind of cases where you have more columns than are visible, that's what these tabs at the bottom are for. If we click on any of these others, it's going to shift our view over, so to speak. And now we're looking at nurse visit through the x-ray column. Okay, and then if we come back to the beginning, we can look at Dr. On Call through Dr. Hahn. Okay, and these resources can be set up to be whatever is appropriate. They can be providers, they can be shared rooms if you have multiple providers, and so on. However you would organize your appointment book typically into columns, that's what you would set your resources up to be. Okay, the little red pen indicator indicates the current time, so that tells you where you are currently through your day, and you can scroll up and down. The amount of time represented on this scheduler here is controlled by the appointment book setup. So I have set this book up to be open from 8 a.m. to essentially 8 p.m. on Wednesdays, and you can set that up by day of the week, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and schedule an appointment for 1 o'clock under Dr. Frank. So in order to do that, I'm simply going to come to the 1 o'clock column right here. I'm sorry, the 1 o'clock row under Dr. Frank's column. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say schedule appointment. So this is scheduling an individual appointment. Okay, and the simplest way to do that, as we saw, go to the day, right click on the area on the book where you want it, schedule appointment. It's going to bring this little window open. We first select our patient, Okay, if you haven't dealt with one of these before, this is a patient control is what we would call this. Okay, and we can use our little check mark to see anybody who's physically in the clinic. Okay, the little 3-line drop down shows me anyone who I've dealt with recently. So if this is a brand new patient that I've added to the system via the quick patient registration or full patient registration, both of which we have gone over in earlier trainings, then they would be at the top of my most recently used list. And if I don't have them in either of those lists, the magnifying glass will let me search for the patient. Okay, right here. I can search by name, code, and so on. And if I click on search fields, I can get to even more things to search on. So if I want to search on home phone, gender, birth date, those types of things, I can just check the box, say save. And then for my login specifically, my little patient search will be customized the way I like it. For now, I'm going to go ahead and pick an appointment for Miss Florence Fletcher, the patient we've been using on several things here. So once you pick your appointment, once you pick your patient, the next item that'll be available is the incident dropdown. So it's going to start with our default incident. However, if they are being seen for workers' comp, we'll want to be sure and change that as appropriate so we know what incident they're coming here to be seen for. Okay. The task is the type of appointment. Again, these are set up in advance and they can be limited by column. So Dr. Frank might only do certain kinds of appointments. Dr. Hahn might do different types of appointments. That's just fine. You can set up your resources, your columns, to only respect certain tasks or only have certain tasks available. Okay, so it is assuming Dr. Frank at 1 p.m. since that's where I clicked. If I misclicked and I meant it to be in a different column or time, I can change that right here. I don't have to close out and go find the other time and right click. I can change it and say, actually, I meant that to be 1:30, so we're going to change it to 1:30. Okay, and we're going to say this is going to be a established patient 30-minute visit. Okay, I'm not going to set it on the waiting list at this point. We'll look at that a little bit later. And we can have appointment notes if we want to. We'll collect outstanding balance when they arrive. Okay, and we can schedule the appointment. So now you can see we added our appointment for Florence Fletcher. It shifted it down to 1:30 since I changed that whenever I was scheduling the appointment. Okay, and we can see the colors that it's being used. So a green background with a blue bar. When I have set up my appointment tasks, I can control what the appointment of that type looks like. So in my case, for my established patients, I like to have a green background. Then I might use the blue bar to indicate, anything else. Maybe the length of time, even though you can see it here, and the number of rows it takes up, or whatever is appropriate. Okay, the background color, just so you know, is what will be used in the Patients in Clinic widget. If I turn on the little option to have the color of the patients that are physically here to show up as the appointment task. That makes it very easy for everyone to see who is physically in the clinic and what they're here for, because it looks at the appointment book and sees what their task was for the day. Okay, so that is adding a single appointment to the book. Pretty straightforward. We find our day. If we wanted to add one for next week, I would go to say the 21st here. I'm just going to click on it. Okay, and then I'd go to the proper time and column and say I'm going to add one right here under nurse visit. Right click, schedule appointment. This time we'll make it for Jackie. And this is going to be for a nurse visit, nurse only. Okay, and we'll schedule. So there she is for tomorrow. You can see based on the type of the appointment, we can preset how long we expect the appointment to be. This one we expect it to be 15 minutes. So it's just a single row. I've set up my appointment book to show 15 minutes per row. You can change that. So if you want every row to be 30 minutes or an hour or 5 minutes, some other increment there, you can set that up when you set up your appointment book. Versus the established one I created on today, 15th, took up 2 rows because it's a 30-minute appointment. Okay, so let's talk about changing the appointment once it's actually in the book. So what if I need to move an appointment? Okay, the first option I have, and typically the simplest, is I can click once on it to select it. If you can notice, I don't know, depending on your resolution, there's a little bit of a bolder bar all the way around the outside of it. If I click off, it kind of gets light. If I click on it, it kind of becomes bolded. That means I have my appointment selected. So I click once to select it. Now I can click and drag and move the appointment wherever is appropriate. And you can even see, if you can see it on your monitor, as I drag it up above the current time, it's putting a little X through the appointment to show me that that patient is now a no-show. So if I move her up to 11:30, oops, I meant to do that at 11:30, it's going to warn me that, hey, you're trying to schedule a new appointment for a time that's already passed. I'll say, yep, I know that. And it puts a little X through the appointment, which will happen to show you that the appointment is a no-show, meaning we have an appointment on the book for this patient, but they have not checked into the clinic. Okay, so I can click and drag, move her back down. There we go. Okay, and you can also move that between columns. It will want to respect the tasks that are available to that column. I might warn you if it doesn't, and so on. Okay, you can also click and make an appointment longer or shorter. So if this is typically a 30-minute visit, and Ms. Fletcher is a bit of a talker, we can drag this out to 45 minutes. Okay, and to do that again, I just clicked once to highlight the appointment, and then I can click down here on the bottom border, and it turns into two little arrows like you're used to seeing if you've ever messed with sizes of windows and things. I'm going to click and drag, and I can move it up or down, and it'll snap to those different rows. So I can resize the appointment that way. Pretty straightforward. Okay, other things we can do to move appointments is we can right-click on the appointment, and we have options for moving the appointment. Okay, this is if we want to move a particular appointment to another day or another appointment book. Okay, one option we have in the appointment scheduler is to have multiple appointment books to represent either multiple physical locations. Maybe we have a cosmetic book or some other type of appointments that we want to keep separate from our normal book. That's just fine. In Practice Studio, you can add as many books as you need to represent your patient load. And to change what book you're currently viewing, you can see right now I'm looking at my Baxter main appointment book up here at the very top. To change my book, I'm going to come over to the left, change book, and select which book I want. So I can move to my 34th location, I can move to my training book, so I can play around, whatever's appropriate. Okay, pick the one that's appropriate, say okay, and it will switch to that new book. Okay, it'll remember whatever book you select. So if this is a location-based book, the next time you open Appointment Scheduler, it'll be today for the most recently selected book, and you can change it if needs be. Okay. If I need to move Ms. Fletcher to my other location, I can right-click on that appointment, say Move, Selected Appointment to another day or book, and it's going to say, okay, here's the appointment we're moving. It's going to be on this day at this time. Where do you want to move it to? And I'm going to keep the same day and time, but I'm going to move it to my 34th book. So they're going to go to the other location. Okay, I can leave it in the same resource, or I can move the resource. Okay, and again, same time, or I can move the time. It also gives me a quick little view to show me any existing appointments that exist on this resource at this time in this book. So I can check for conflicts before I say okay. Okay, just a convenience there. Then I'm going to reschedule it, and now the appointment is gone. And if I go over to my 34th book where I moved it to, there it is. It landed over there on my 34th appointment book. Okay, so the second way to move it is through that right-click Move. Okay, the ones down below, we can move an entire column to another day, every appointment for today to another day, or an entire column to a different column. Okay, these are to be used sparingly. They move mass appointments, so all the appointments on a particular column. Say, Dr. Frank can't come in today, he's sick or something has come up, so we need to move all his appointments to another day. I can move every single one for today to next Monday or next Tuesday or whatever's appropriate through one click if I need to. Likewise, if the clinic is unexpectedly closed because we had a snow day or whatnot, we can move everything from today to a new day if we need to. And if someone's filling in for Dr. Frank, I can move all the appointments to another resource. Okay, again, this is something to be used sparingly. You don't want to accidentally do that, because if you move every appointment for today to a different day, then it's a little bit of work to move them back if that was inappropriate. I'll show you here in a bit how you can go and look at the audit and see what was moved when, so you can unravel that if it happens. But we want to be conscious whenever we use these bottom three options. And a lot of clinics will actually limit access to those three features through our security maintenance to anyone but an office manager, so that they're not selected accidentally. Okay. Two most common would be to actually drag an appointment around on the same day, or use this top option to move it to a different day or book. Okay, so that's moving in an appointment. Next thing we want to look at is the details for a particular appointment. So we can see with the little red dot right here that there are notes on this appointment. Okay, other things we might want to see on the appointment are more details for the patient and so on. If I just double click on any appointment, it's going to bring open the information, the details for that appointment. It shows me the patient's information up top. Notice it also gives me access to that patient control. Okay, I can't change the patient on this from this direction, but the nice thing about having this available is I can look at any notes related to the patient, so I can see any phone notes or whatnot. If I'm calling the patient and we have a phone note here, I can add to my phone note right from here. I don't have to go anywhere else. And likewise, if I'm verifying insurance in advance, I can go to tomorrow's book, double click on the appointment, and click on my little insurance verification shield up here to indicate whether the insurance is verified or not. Or if I have the Optum clearinghouse, I can electronically verify through that same process. I can see their provider of record, where they live, their phone number, so I can call them, okay, how they prefer to be communicated with if we've specified that on their patient registration, and the appointment details right there. At the bottom, we can see that appointment note that we added, and we can change it if we need to. This will print on the day sheet if we're using day sheets and things of that nature. If we're using appointment confirmation, so the text message reminders, we can see right here whether the patient has confirmed their appointment, whether that appointment has been indicated as confirmed, who did it, and when. Okay, we'll see how to do it manually here in a moment, but this would also reflect if the patient has responded to that text message and marked it as confirmed. Okay, and lastly, we can see our appointment history. This shows everything that's happened to this appointment. So in this case, I mentioned earlier, if you move an entire resource or day to a different day, you have to go and see, okay, where did those land? How do I identify which appointments now for next Monday should have been for today and someone accidentally moved it? We can go to those appointments, go to the history, and we can see right there that I moved it. Dustin Taylor right there, there's the user. That's when I did it, and this is what happened if we scroll down a little bit. Okay, it moved it from Maine to the 34th book right down here. So it gives you that history of everything that happened to it so you can see what happened after the fact if you need to. Okay, so that's going to be your appointment details. Very handy if you need it. Okay. Other things you can do with an appointment, I'm going to right click on it and see our other options for an existing appointment. Okay, we can schedule a second appointment for this same time frame. Okay, so by right clicking on even the existing appointment, I can say, well, I don't really need anything for Miss Fletcher's appointment, but I need to double book in this time frame for a new patient. I can right click, schedule appointment, and go ahead and schedule Jackie for that same time frame. We'll say it's a 15-minute one. Okay, and you'll see it kind of scooches Florence Fletcher over so that they both fit in the same column. You can control whether or not this is an option and how many double bookings you want to allow in a particular time frame when you set up your resource. So you can say you allow 2 at the same time, 3, and so on. That's overbookings. Okay, if I right click on the appointment, we can also get to the future appointments wizard from here. We'll talk about that in a moment. That's to schedule multiple appointments for one patient at one time. Okay, and then down below, we have items that are available for the specific appointment you right clicked on. Okay, so the first thing is I can delete an appointment. I can remove it entirely if it was an accident or I just need to get rid of it. I can cancel an appointment, which is typically more appropriate if it was a proper appointment to begin with. So if we'll say Miss Demo Guy here is going to cancel her appointment, I can right click on that one, say cancel appointment, and it's going to ask you, why is she canceling? Okay, we have some basic cancellation reasons. Okay, and you can customize this drop down, and then you can give more detailed notes. She called and can't come in today. Okay, and you can see down here I can add new drop downs from down below if we need to. Okay, that way from reports, I have some general categories on why patients have canceled, and then I can have my detailed view if I need it, if I'm ever looking at the patient's history. Okay, you'll notice that once I canceled the appointment, it completely went away. It's kind of invisible, so to speak, in the scheduler since it was canceled. Okay, I can toggle an option to make those visible again. It's a little more cluttered to see all the canceled appointments, but it's more clear too if you're needing to look for them, and we'll look at that here in a moment. Okay, other things I can do with an appointment, we'll go back to Miss Fletcher's. We've talked about moving. Okay, we can change the task. So if we schedule this for a 30-minute established patient, but you know what? That's improper. This is actually going to be a 30-minute consultation. I can right-click, change my task. So what is the type of the appointment? It actually should have been a consultation. Notice it changed my color to match. So I can see visually what that type of appointment was. I'm going to change it back because I like the color of the established. We'll see that in a moment. You can also see by type when we set up our appointment tasks, whether or not it's going to show you the little summary of what the task is too. Okay, so I can change the task of the appointment. I can check the patient in. This is probably the most used right-click option for an appointment. Once the patient physically shows up in your clinic, you're going to find them on your book, you're going to right-click on them, and you're going to check them in. So I'm going to check in Miss Daisy right here. As soon as you check them in, if there's a forced viewing note, that'll show, so a little reminder for myself, and it'll show you the check-in window right here. So a couple things to point out right here. This is telling the system the patient has physically arrived at the clinic. We do have some kiosk options, and they can check themselves in via the kiosk if you prefer, but this is the front desk manually doing it. The benefit of them manually doing it is it can give them information like their outstanding balance. You can see as they're checking in, she owes us $35.84. We can go ahead and collect that now before they go back to a room and rack up more charges. So it's good to have that information up front. Okay, you can see details for the appointment, their insurance details if you need to know that, and you have an option of printing what we call a routing slip. That would be the day sheet or something. Different people call them different things, but that's a piece of paper that can follow the patient around the clinic. The providers might circle charges and DX codes on it just for clinical flow purposes. If you use one of those, you can print it right now. If you don't, you don't have to. So I'm going to say OK. And you'll notice a little green dot appear to indicate the patient is actually checked in now. I'm going to go ahead and check in Miss Fletcher as well. So we'll check her in. It's going to bring up the check-in dialog. She did not have one of those alert notes that forces me to view it, so I went straight here to check-in dialog. See her outstanding balance. She's all paid up, but we're waiting on some money from her insurance in case she asks. And we can say OK. And now, little green dot, she's checked in. Okay, so that's checking in. Very, very common thing to do with existing appointments. Okay, we can confirm the appointment manually. This is if we've called the patient, so say they didn't respond to their text messages or we're not utilizing the text message piece. If we're calling the patient, I can right click and manually verify that they said they were coming in. So we called and asked, they confirmed they're coming. Once I do that, it's going to check the box for the confirmation. We can clear it if appropriate. So if that was an accident, I can right click. My confirm appointment changes once it's confirmed to clear confirmation. So I can undo that if I need to. And I get a little check mark in the bottom right so I can visually see every appointment that's been confirmed by the patient. Okay, if I look at my appointment details, we can see right here at the bottom, it's obviously confirmed in green. And if I need to know who did it and when, under confirmation, I can see here's the time and date that got confirmed and who actually did it. So I can see that one of my staff members, myself in this case, manually confirmed the appointment. If it had been the patient through a text message, that would indicate that under notes. Okay, so it's confirmed. Okay, next thing down is to print the routing slip manually. If we didn't get it printed up front or we want to do it in advance and we are using those, I can do that through the right click. Okay, the next section down below here, we see a little line break there. These are all informational pieces or navigation pieces related to the patient on this appointment. So it's very common when I'm looking at my scheduler to need to get to some different information for this patient. So I can right click, I can get to the patient inquiry, which is a feature of the appointment scheduler that shows me all their future appointments, their previous appointments, and so on. If I need to go see their appointment history, so to speak. That's what we call the patient appointment inquiry. You can get to it by right-clicking on the appointment and going to patient inquiry. We'll look at it more in depth here in a moment. It's also available here as one of the options on the left. Okay, I can get to the appointment details. That's the exact same as double-clicking the appointment. It's going to bring up that same window. I can get straight to patient registration. So if I need to look at or change something on their registration, I can click that. It's going to take me straight to the registration page of Practice Studio and immediately let me start reviewing it or editing it if I need to. Okay, so that's just a convenient shortcut for me to get there. Okay, likewise, I can get to their ledger or their medical records or their media. Okay, that's going to basically do the same type of thing, but when it comes over to Practice Studio, rather than pulling up the registration page of the patient folder, it's going to pull up that other appropriate page. So if I pick on Ledger, it's going to open the patient folder in the main Practice Studio window, and it's going to go to the Ledger page. Notice that page on the left is selected. It's showing me the patient's financial history so I can see it. Okay, and we've gone over this on an earlier webinar in detail. But notice every time I use that right click, it's going to open the patient's folder and go to the appropriate page. Once I have the folder open, I can also, of course, come over to the left and just select the appropriate page. If I do my pin, you can see here's registration. The ledger is there. If we needed to get to their medical record or their scanned media, we can get to those as well. So once we have the folder open, we can stay here and click on the appropriate page. But until we have the folder open, and if we're in the appointment scheduler, these are just convenient shortcuts to get straight there. So I don't have to go type the appointment's name in anywhere else. Okay, then we get to that little toggle we mentioned earlier to hide cancellations. By default, any cancellation that you've done will disappear from your view. If you're wanting to see those, you can right-click anywhere and untoggle the hide cancellations. Now notice we have a grayed out Jackie Demo Guy appointment. Graying it out means that it's been canceled. Okay, and we can even right-click on it and reverse the cancellation if that was an accident. So if you cancel an appointment by accident and it disappears on you and you want to correct it, you would right-click, uncheck your hide cancellations so you can now see it. Now that we can see it, we can right-click, reverse the cancellation. Yes, I'm sure. Now it's a regular appointment again, it's not canceled, and we can turn our hide back on and it'll stay there. Okay, so that's the hide cancellations. Typically cleans up your view, but it's good to know how to get there if you need it. And lastly, we have legend. Legend just tells you what the little colored dots mean if you ever forget. The red dot means that the appointment has notes, the green dot means that the patient is checked in, and a blue dot, which we haven't seen yet, indicates the patient has additional future appointments. Okay, so that's going to be the basic training on this right-hand side as far as adding appointments and dealing with appointments. It's pretty straightforward. You right-click, make the appropriate choice, and then go from there. Okay, let's move over to the left-hand side and see some of these functional pieces over here so we know how to utilize them. Okay, the first and most obvious is the calendar at the top. Okay, again, when we open the appointment scheduler, it's going to default to today. We simply click on the day we want if we want to look at a different day for the same book. Okay, and you can always get back to today by clicking down here and clicking on the today. It always shows you what the current date is, and we can actually click on that and it moves you straight back to today, so you don't have to go find it. Okay, the little arrows up here at the top let you move forward or backward a month at a time. So if we're scheduling future appointments, we can navigate up here to July 10th, schedule an appointment for Miss Fletcher by right-clicking on the appropriate place. Okay, schedule the appointment, great. And then we can hop back to today by just clicking on the today little link. It's a very common way to schedule a single appointment in the future. Okay, next option down below will be our day or work week or our week view. So the default view shows you multiple columns, okay, where each column is a different resource, a different doctor or a room, say, okay, and it will show you that for a single day. Occasionally, it's nice to see a particular doctor's schedule for the whole week. If we want to do that, we can click on Work Week as an example. That'll show you Monday through Friday for whatever resource we want. And we're going to say Dr. Frank in this case. So now if we switch to Dr. Frank, notice at the top we have Dr. Frank. So everything we're looking at is specifically for Dr. Frank. We're not looking at any other resources. The columns now show you the individual days of the week you have selected. So I'm selected on the 15th. It's showing you the whole work week, Monday through Friday, for that week. If I go pick a different week, the whole thing is going to shift to that new week. So I can see a particular provider's entire week at a time if I want to. The 7-day week is just what you would expect. Same basic principle, but it's also showing you Saturday and Sunday there. So it's not just 5 columns, it's 7 columns, depending on your needs. To come back to the regular view so I can see multiple resources, I would just click back on 1-day view. And now it's showing me the single day I have selected, and it's showing me all my individual resources. So Dr. Frank, Dr. Hahn, and so on. Okay. Next option down here is Jump To. So Jump To is a convenient thing that you can customize. When you first get the system installed, you likely won't have any of these options. You'll only see Customize. This basically lets you move forward in time by a particular increment if you're commonly doing similar increments on follow-up appointments. So if it's very common to need the patient to come back in 1 week or 1 month or 5 days or whatever's appropriate for your scope of practice, you can come here to Customize. And we say, okay, we're going to add a new Jump To option. This is going to be called 5 days. So whatever you want to call it. Okay, I like to be as clear as possible with my name, but whatever you want to name it. And we're going to say for whenever I click on 5 days, it's going to move forward 5, however many numbers, and then how far, we're going to say days. Okay, notice we can make it a year, we can make it weeks, we can make it months, whatever's appropriate. Okay, so in this case, it's 5 days. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to say okay. So now if I say jump to, I now have 5 days as my option. Okay, it's organized by the shortest time to the longest time right here. Okay, so if I click on 5 days, it jumps forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days from today. If I would have said jump to 3 weeks, it's going to jump 3 weeks from the current day. So I don't have to count. I don't have to do any of that. Okay, I can just use my jump to go straight to a month from now or a year from now or whatever's appropriate. If those are common, I just set those up. It just makes a quick little shorthand to get there. Same as navigating there manually, but just faster. Okay. Next option again for finding a future date quickly is the extended calendar. When I click it, it's going to show me 16 months starting with the current month. So currently we're in May of 2019 as the time of the recording here. Okay. And it's going to show me starting with May the next 16 months, and I can go select any of these individual days. So if I need to come back after a year, okay, I can see all the way through May of 2020 and then some. So I can go all the way to May 22nd of 2020 if I want to, and it's going to go and select that day. Okay, so I can come back to today. There we go. So that's just a way to get far in the future, or just not have to click forward, forward, forward if it's more than 1 or 2 months in the future. I can go straight here, click on the appropriate day, makes it very fast. Okay. Extended calendar. Change book we've already talked about. That's how you change which appointment book you're currently looking at. There we go. You can see at the very, very top which appointment book is currently pulled up. There we go. Okay, and then move on. Patient check-in is basically the same as right-clicking and checking in an appointment, but you get to pick the patient. So I don't want to find the appointment. I just want to manually check a patient in. Say you have a walk-in. So someone walks in, they don't have an appointment. This is one way I can click on patient check-in, find your patient, and indicate they're now in the clinic. Typically, that is what we recommend to handle a walk-in. So if a patient walks into your clinic, they didn't have an appointment, typically we're not going to right-click and schedule them an appointment very quickly, because then on the reporting side of things, it's difficult to determine how many walk-ins I had for a given day or week. I want to be able to see how many of these were actual scheduled appointments, how many of the appointments got missed, and so on, and then how many walk-ins I had. From Practice Studio's perspective, a walk-in means a patient got checked in without an appointment for the day. So we would just go straight over here to patient check-in on the left, and then pick our patient, and then check them in. Okay, makes it very easy. You could also get to check in from the regular Practice Studio window. If you go up to Quick Launch, pick your patient, check in is one of the options that appears. Okay. A quick patient registration and full patient registration we've covered on previous webinars. That's how you enroll a new patient into the clinic if they're not in there yet. Okay, and then we get to inquiries and reminders. Okay, so inquiries and reminders lets us get to that patient inquiry we talked about. So if we right-click on any appointment and go to patient inquiry, it'll show you future appointments, previous appointments, any no-shows for the patient, any cancellations, and any walk-ins for the patient. So it shows you their whole appointment history. We can print any of these individual lists if we need to. We can go to the appointment details for that, and so on. Okay. If we don't want to go find an appointment, if the doctor's asking questions or we just need to do research on a particular patient, I can come over here to the left, go to inquiries and reminders, and then go to patient inquiry right there. Okay, and then I get to pick my patient, load the results, and there we go. There's the appointment history for that patient and incident. Okay. General inquiry is not patient specific. So for a particular day, I can see how many no-shows, cancellations, or walk-ins we had on that particular day. We can then change the date to look at a different day. We can look at the details of any particular appointment right there. So if I'm wanting to see in a quick view here without printing anything, my appointments for the day, I can go there to look at it. Okay. And then up at the top, we have appointment recalls. This is a feature to go and send out text messages and things, or print a list of patients that haven't been seen in a certain period of time. Okay, it's a little bit more technical, probably beyond the scope of this particular webinar since it's not really a daily function, but it's something where we could go and indicate what kind of an appointment, how long should it have been. So maybe I haven't seen them in 3 months, but I have seen them within the last year. Okay, and there's other filter options to kind of target in that patient list. And then we can send them, print a label if we're going to send them a card or even send them a text message, similar things to recall those patients, to remind them to come back in for a yearly appointment or something similar. Okay, and that's the inquiries and reminders. Print, and we're not going to go through every one of these, but we'll look at a couple. Print lets us print off reports that are appointment specific. So we can see future appointments. So for a particular patient, we can print a report of all their future appointments. So let's go make a future appointment or two for Miss Fletcher. I'm going to go in the future, schedule one here for Miss Fletcher. Here we go. Okay, and then we'll go a little bit more in the future, schedule one there. Just right-clicking, picking Miss Fletcher, scheduling an appointment. Great. Okay, and then I'm going to print future appointments for Miss Fletcher. It's the same patient control, same options to search. Since I've been dealing with Florence Fletcher, she's at the top of my little 3-line drop-down list. There she is. Okay, and if you have multiple appointments on a day, say that they're seeing a chiropractor and then seeing a physical therapist, or whatever they're seeing a dermatologist and then seeing a cosmetician or whatnot, you can choose to only show the first one for the day, if appropriate, and then run. That's going to give a sheet, an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that shows all of the appointments that are in the future for the appointment. Once I get our treatment plan set up, if we have a treatment plan with multiple appointments, this is a good thing to print so that they have record right there when they're supposed to show back up. And you can see all the future appointments for the patient listed right there. Okay, in the future appointment wizard, we'll see here in a moment, the last step of it is to print one of those future appointment reports. We have a direct link from that wizard to do so. Okay, cancellation report, same basic thing. You can say how many cancellations did I have in a certain time frame for a given appointment. So it's not patient specific. I want to look at all of my cancellations by book and time frame. Okay, and you can even filter out patients that then rescheduled. So if they canceled but then rescheduled, I can choose to not include them on my report. I only want to know about patients that canceled and did not reschedule. Okay. No-show report is very similar to the cancellation, shows people who did not show up for their appointments by the day. Visually, you can see that if we have, let's go to the day and take Miss Demo Guy here who has not yet been checked in, move her up. It's going to stay in the Dr. Frank column, excuse me. Yes, we know that's in the past. So any appointment that where the little red line goes past the start of the appointment and they have not yet been checked in is going to show us this kind of blue X. This X through the appointment indicates it's a no-show. If they come in late, that's fine. We can come check them in. They are no longer a no-show. It shows that they did show up. They were just late, so they wouldn't show up on my no-show report. Okay, but there's my no-shows. Appointments by date range, it lets me print my schedule for today. So if I want to see everyone I'm seeing today on one piece of paper, I can use appointments by date range to do that. I can also print it for the week. I can do it across multiple appointment books. There's quite a few options here to target in that listing as appropriate. Okay, and then down below, we have a number of letters you can use. So if you want to have a form letter for patients who missed their appointment, who need to have a follow-up for an appointment recall and so on, this lets us get direct access to those form letters so we can print them on a patient-by-patient basis. Okay, the last of which is probably the most used, which is a little reminder card you can do for a patient. So we'll pick Ms. Fletcher here. Okay, and that's going to be, instead of a full piece of paper, if you notice, it's a little reminder card. So this is designed not to print on a full piece of paper, but to print on one of those Dymo printers. So if you've ever seen those little Dymo thermal printers or inkjet printers that can print out on cardstock or on labels and things, okay, that can just print that out. You can hand the card to the patient and you can have your logo and clinic info on it and so on. Okay, so that's going to be our options on the left. Okay, your setup and options is just for that. It's for setting up the appointment book itself, which is not the scope of today's training. That's where you would go to actually set up your resources and your tasks. These little colored items we haven't talked about, but essentially what those are for, let's move over to our Baxter book. Okay, these indicate are what we call events and templates. So it could indicate a lunch hour. It could indicate just something informational, schedule lightly for today, or Dr. Han is gone for today, those types of things. And depending on the particular event and template, how it's set up, it can prevent you from scheduling. So for lunch, we don't want to allow you to schedule, versus here, it is going to let you schedule. It's just going to notify you of that. So it's how you can kind of color code your appointment to give information to the front desk as appropriate. And when you set up those events and templates, you can control what kind of access they have. Functionally, just a nice little feature there. If you are the person who sets these up or maintains them, you can right-click right here on anything that has an event and template and go and modify that right there. So modify event and template. These two are available because beneath where I clicked, beneath this little row, I have two events. I have Dr. Han Wednesday and lunch. I can get to either of those and tweak the setup for that event and template right here. So this is setup. This is not just normal front desk process, so it goes beyond the scope of today's webinar. But if you are someone who deals with that, that's a nice way to get to it. Okay. Obviously, you would control access to that as appropriate, so you don't have the wrong people making those changes. Okay. So the last little thing we want to go through here before we get to that future appointment wizard, which will be the very last thing related to appointments, is going to be the waiting list. So whenever you schedule a future appointment, so let's go forward here to the 27th, schedule an appointment, and we'll say it's for our favorite person, Miss Fletcher here. I have the option right here to check a little box and say that this patient, we're going to go ahead and schedule it here for the 27th. But if something opens up prior to that, I'd like to be notified so the patient can reschedule if appropriate. So I'm going to check the little box here, schedule that appointment, and you'll notice now we have somebody on the waiting list. Okay, so we have one active person on the waiting list. Here's who they are so we can see it. So if manually we see an opening open up, we can go right here to our waiting list, see who it is. Okay, we can view the waiting list by clicking the little link. You can see everybody currently on the waiting list. By default, they'll just end up falling into this waiting list in the order you add them in. So the next person that has a future appointment and schedules, so we'll pick Betty here. They'll end up on the waiting list after Florence, since they got added after. Okay, but you can come here and reorder if appropriate. So if Betty should go first, so if she should get first dibs on a new appointment, we can move her up in the list down here. Okay, we can add a patient manually to the waiting list, so it won't be linked to a particular appointment. It's just added to the waiting list in general right there. We can edit the details of the waiting list right there. So when does it expire and so on. After their scheduled appointment, obviously we don't need them on the waiting list any longer, so it'll fall off. We can change those details. Okay, or we can remove them from the waiting list. Likewise, we can see the details of the appointment that they use to add this person. Typically, what works best is if you do add someone to the waiting list by scheduling a future appointment, because that's typically what's happening. You're going to go ahead and get them on the book for a month from now, but if something comes up sooner, let's go ahead and call them and let them know. Okay, by doing it that way, scheduling the appointment and checking the box, we create a linkage between this new appointment and their waiting list entry, and we'll see the benefit of that in a moment. Okay, we can add them manually if needs be, but wherever possible, if they are going to have a future appointment, let's do it this way by scheduling the appointment, checking the box. Okay, so now how does that behave when a cancellation actually occurs? So if I come here and let's pick this one here, cancel any appointment that matches. So I'm going to cancel for whatever reason. It's going to pop up and say, hey, you just canceled an appointment. That means a slot's now available. Here are my list of patients that are on the waiting list. So it shows it to me in whatever order I've specified, gives me her contact information, gives me some details about when her next appointment is. I can click right here to see the full details. Oh no, that's a physical, that doesn't really fit. So I can move on to the next person. Okay, what's this one? Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so we find the person, we can call. Okay, we can see any appointment notes. And then if they do want to go ahead and take that slot, we can either move that existing appointment. That's only going to be available if I created it by creating a new appointment by using that checkbox. Okay, or I can schedule a brand new appointment for this time. So it makes it very easy to go and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and move that. So it took that future appointment, great, and it's going to reschedule it to that slot that I just opened up there. Okay, waiting list is very handy if you have full books, and that's a common thing that happens to you. Okay, so that's your waiting list. Very last thing we want to look at here, and it's also available at the checkout rather, which we'll look at next, is the future appointments wizard. So this future appointments wizard, I got to it by right-clicking and saying future appointments wizard. As I said, it's also available at checkout. This is to schedule multiple appointments for one patient in the future. So if Miss Fletcher is coming back for a treatment plan, so say she's going to come back in for an established patient visit, and we want to bring her back in a total of we'll say 4 times. It's going to be 1 week in between each appointment. Maybe it was 2 days, 3 days, whatever's appropriate. Okay, so how many times does the doctor want to see them? How much time in between each appointment should I give? Okay, who's going to see them? So I've established what kind of appointment it is. Up here at the top right, it's Dr. Frank that's going to see them. Okay, we can do, yeah, Dr. Frank. Okay, and then in the middle here, we can start specifying, okay, patient, so Miss Fletcher, when are you available? So we're going to wait at least 2 days because we just saw her today. Okay, or we'll say we'll wait a week since that falls in line with what the provider asked for. Okay, so we'll adjust that start time. So it's going to start on the 22nd right there. Can you do mornings? Can you do afternoons? Is there a particular time frame that you can do within the day? I'm going to say she can do afternoons. Okay, and really my Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are what works best for me. Okay, so I'm specifying when I'm going to start looking, and then I can specify the preferences based on the patient's availability, morning, afternoon, specific time frame, and then what days of the week are they available. Okay, so I go ahead and set all that up. Now I can start searching. So it's going to search, and it went ahead to May 22nd like I requested. It's going to show me all the available afternoon times. My book's not very full, so there's a lot available. I can say, you know what, 2 o'clock works great for me. I'm going to go ahead and pick 2 o'clock. I'm going to schedule that. So I just now scheduled an appointment. We saw a little notice down there. The first of 4 visits just got scheduled. Now it's skipping to the next week. You know what, that Wednesday doesn't work good for me. I'm going to continue my search. How about Thursday? Yep, Thursday at 3 works great. Okay, Thursday, June 6th. That's fine for me too. Okay, and then that Thursday doesn't work for me either. Okay, how about the Tuesday following? We're going to say 1 o'clock. Okay, so very quickly I can go through there and schedule all those appointments. Here's my summary of it all. So there's my visit 1, 2, 3, 4. It also includes any other future appointments that were already on the books. Okay, and I can right from here, print that report I talked about that shows me all the future appointments. So as they leave, they have a listing of every time they're supposed to come back into the clinic. So for those situations where you have a treatment plan where they're coming back in multiple times, that future appointment wizard is great to go and get that on the book all at one time. Okay, so that's going to be our appointment scheduler. As I said, that's the biggest block of training for today. Okay, we're going to move on to some of the other front desk tasks. These will go a bit quicker. So I'm going to minimize my appointment scheduler. Okay, the next biggest thing, so to speak, is going to be patient media. So this is scanning. As a front desk person, it's pretty common to need to scan in items. They're one of the stations in the clinic typically that's going to scan in incoming lab results, scan in paperwork that might have come in from the patient, and so on. Okay, and there are a couple ways to do that, so it's important to know how. The first way that we can scan in items is to scan it in patient by patient. Okay, and to do that, we would come up, pick our patient either from here, or if they're checked into my clinic, my patients in clinic widget would be set to show the summary. Since I'm a front desk person, I can pick on their little face, and then I can come here to media from this little patient summary. This is the same thing that would show up if I had to pick them from Quick Launch. And it's going to pull up their patient folder, go to the media tab. That's where I'm trying to get to, is the media page of their patient folder. And right from here, I can start scanning things in. So what you're seeing at the top of this middle column are the categories of possible scanned items. Okay, so I pick what category this belongs to. This is we'll say just general patient information. So that's the category I want. And then I can go in, and if I have a scanner attached, I can scan, or I can import. Okay, right here. So I was putting the wrong button there. I apologize. I can import if the item's already on my server somewhere, and I can go pull it in. If I've got an imaging from an imaging center, I can go even pull in DICOM images. I can pull in multiple images if they gave me a whole series. Any of those options are available right here. I can go find that and pull it in. If it's a CD-ROM that's in there, that's a good way to do it, and so on. Okay, if it's actually from a scanner, so I do have a document waiting out there on the scanner, I'm going to go ahead and click scan. Okay, which scanner am I scanning into? Right there, that's great. Okay, and then I can go ahead and say, yep, duplex, all that's great, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and start my scan. It's going to go pull that document off of my scanner and let me title it here in a moment and bring it into the patient's chart. So if it's just a single document that I'm going to go pull in for a single patient, okay, that's a quick way to do it. So here's the document that I had sitting out on my scanner. There it landed, great. So what's my title? This is a post-concussion symptom, okay, questionnaire, okay. The category is whatever I picked on here. I can change it if I accidentally picked the wrong category. By the way, these categories are customizable. The little gear here, typically that'd be the office manager doing this. The little gear can go and set up which categories I want available. So how am I going to categorize all my scan things across all my patients? So I need patient information. Do I need referring documents? Whatever, blocks I want to have in there. The little gear lets me do that. Okay. Do I want to trigger messaging on it? Yes or no? Comments and then tags to find it easier later. Okay. Once I'm done, I click my little save icon. That's important. And that's going to save. Now it's under the patient's record, under patient information. Great. So that's the way to individually scan. Okay. Next to that scan, we have what's called a quick scan. Okay. I'm going to look at this from my widget because that's typically where I would launch a quick scan. Quick scan lets me identify a common type of document that I'm scanning. So very, very common things are driver's licenses, insurance cards, or patient documents and things that I see all the time. The benefit of this is I can go in advance and say what the name of the document is, where it should go. So under patient information in this case, for a driver's license, maybe I want to crop it down or do it in color or not, or those types of things. Get all that set up in advance. So what you just saw me have to do, go to the patient, pick patient information, type all that in. I don't have to do any of that live. I just click quick scan, pick my template, and start. Okay. So quick scan's available there from the patient's folder itself. Okay, so that's patient folder scanning. If I have one thing for one patient, that's a good way to do it. The other way to scan is using what we call a widget. So from my home folder here, I have several widgets available. I have my launcher, I have my patients in clinic, I have my little current time and date. I've added these by coming here to the bottom and adding widgets, and I've even added a couple pages for myself. I have reminders we'll look at here in a moment, and then we have scanning right here. I've added a scanning page to cover all of my scanning needs. Okay, right here by adding dashboard page. We went over all the details of how to modify your home folder on that first overview video. So I'm going to hop down to my scanning page. I've added a widget, document and media management console. This lets me scan both two things. First, I can get to a quick scan very quickly right here. So if I want to scan a driver's license, in fact, let me do this. I am going to scan missed patient documents. Bear with me for 2 moments while I reload that same piece of paper so I can actually show this. Reloaded my paper rather. So I'm going to go ahead and scan my quick scan for missed patient documents. I'm going to choose where that should end up. So that should go onto a patient, and we're going to go straight to Miss Fletcher again. There she is. This behaves the same way as our quick launch, which we talked about on our overview. So those same search options we have up there, we have right here. I'm going to pick Miss Fletcher and start scan. So that's very, very quick. It's immediately going to suck that document in, and it's going to customize it as I've defined the quick scan template. So if this was a driver's license, it'll crop it down and do the color and do all that type of information. In this case, it's going to go ahead and title it appropriately and so on. So that's all I had to do. I had to pick my scan template. I had to choose destination, so pick my patient and say go. So if I'm scanning insurance cards and driver's licenses all day long at the front desk, this is my best friend. I don't have to go find my patient and go through other routes. I can do it all from right here in just a couple clicks. If we go look at Miss Fletcher and look at her media under wherever that landed, okay, under that document, there it is. There's the document we just scanned for her. Okay, so it ended up right where it was supposed to be. I didn't have to figure out the title as I was scanning it. That's all determined in advance. So quick scan templates, very, very powerful. Like most other things, the little gear right here is how you set up those quick scan templates. So we go set up the driver's license to be titled a certain thing and scan using this particular scanner and so on. Okay, so that's the first use of the Media Management Console widget. The second use is if you're needing to scan a bunch of things at one time. So one thing that can happen is you get a fax in, or you get a bunch of referred documents in that might cover multiple patients. Okay, and you're having to scan all that in and manage all those details. Okay, you can certainly pull up the individual patients, go to where it belongs, scan them all in individually, okay, and that'll work just fine. But that's a little inefficient because you're having to pull up each individual patient, go to the area, and then you're going to click scan. Before you click scan though, you got to go load those 2 pages, then click scan, let it suck it through, save it. Now go to the next patient, load the next 3 pages, and so on. So it's a little back and forth walking to the scanner like I had to do a moment ago to do it that route. What we can do instead is go ahead and say scan and let it pull in, just take the whole 6 or 10 or 50 pages in the packet you have, even if they're across multiple patients, let it scan them all in at once, okay? And then we can deal with them in what's called a sorting table. I did that before starting the video today. So if I look at my sorting table, I scanned in 6 pages all in one block. When I click that, here are those 6 pages that we did 86 minutes ago, okay? And this sorting table can be unique to me. So when I click scan, it's going to go in to whatever sorting bucket I've defined when I set up my widget. That's one of the things we do when we set up a new widget. We say, what scanner are we using? So if I had a brand new media management widget right here, okay, the first thing it wants me to do is configure it. And it's going to say, okay, great. Which scanner are you using for this widget? And which bucket should it end up within? Okay, and I can use my little gear to set up other buckets if I want to. So this can be person specific, it can be the front desk, it can be whatever you want, or everyone can go to the same bucket, whatever's appropriate for your clinic. Okay, where should those documents land in the middle step? Okay, and then you can also set up some preferences. These default preferences typically work pretty well to keep your files readable, but not too big, so your backups don't get huge. Okay, and you can tweak those if you need to. Okay, so I've already done that. Set up here. Let me remove that extra widget. So it's scanning from my scanner I just used a moment ago to my specific bucket. When I view my sorting table, it's going to show me every document that's sitting on my bucket. Okay, and I can click my little preview item in the bottom right and hold, and it'll make it bigger real quick so I can see, okay, what's this? This is for Florence Fletcher, okay. So is that, okay, great. That's the second page of that document, okay. And now we have, oh, that's for Erwin Cameron, so that's a new patient. So what I'm going to do is, okay, this is a consent for Florence Fletcher. I'm going to do a new patient document up here to the right. And this is going to be a consent. Okay, and this is going to be for Florence Fletcher. There she is. Okay, and by the way, since I have my resolution so low, it's not showing me the right-hand side of this. I do have my little drop-down. So if I've been using her, I can use my little 3-line drop-down. Okay, but since I have my resolution set for recording, you're not seeing that right-hand side. Okay, Florence Fletcher, where should it go? We're going to call that care documents, and then I can just drag this guy right over there. Boom, there's that document. Okay, I need another one. It's going to be medical record. Okay, from referring physician. Okay, and again, that's going to be Florence Fletcher. Great. And I'm going to take both of these. I'm going to drag them right there. Okay, great. Okay, and then lastly, what was this for? This was for Cameron Irwin. It's another referring one. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm happy with that first document. So we save that. Wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm happy with this document. Great. Okay, and now for these 3, that's for, was it Cameron Irwin? So Cameron Irwin. Cameron Irwin. Okay, and this is referral report. Okay, and again, these 3 guys, check all these. Drag them right over. There we go. And we can save that. So you can see very quickly, and we want to say where it came from. So that's a patient care document there. Save that. Oh, I need to pick my patient. There he is. Okay, so pick our patient, save it. Okay, and that saves those documents to that appropriate patient. Okay, so that's a very fast way, as you saw, or a faster way to go. And if that could have been 20 or 50 or whatever, but it lets us in a more logical way go and scan all 20 pages. And then when I have a moment, I can go and open up my sorting table and work through it just as you saw me do to go and create those individual media items under the individual patients. So a convenient way to do that if that's something you do have to do within your clinic. Okay, so that's going to be scanning in Practice Studio. Quick scans, what you typically use more often than anything because you're scanning in insurance cards and patient's driver's license and so on. But the scanning bucket is super helpful if you're ever scanning large blocks of papers. And for individual one-off items for individual patients, you can always pull up the patient under Quick Launch, go to their media folder, and just import or scan it. So if you're importing imaging from a CD or you're importing something from another doctor, there's nothing wrong with coming straight to the patient, picking where it belongs, and either clicking the import little page with the arrow or scan to pull it in from your scanner. And you also have the quick scan available right from there. Whatever route you go, it ends up in the same place. It ends up in the media for the patient. It's just whatever the most convenient way to get it there is for you specifically. Okay. So next thing we want to look at is reminders. We're not going to go super deep into the appointment reminders. We just want to kind of talk about some of the capability here. Okay, reminders in Practice Studio is an add-on option. If you choose to utilize it, it can send text messages and or emails to your patients to remind them of their upcoming appointment. Okay, you get to specify how often to send the reminder. So do I want to send it a day before, 2 days before? Do I want to send it a week before and then again a day before? We even have the option to send what we call an imminent reminder. So should we send a reminder an hour before the current appointment and so on? So you get to control all of that. You get to control how the text message looks and reads and so on, so that it can say different things even for different kinds of appointments. For an initial appointment, you can say show up early to fill out paperwork or whatever is appropriate. You get to control all of that during the setup of it and so on. And then day to day, which is the one thing we're going to touch on here right now, the way you're managing those reminders typically is with this reminders widget. This is another widget I've added, okay, for my little add widget here. Appointment reminders right at the top is what I did. I added it right here, and then I set it up to point to this specific appointment book for my logged in clinic. And so from here, I can see a quick little summary of all the appointments I have for today. Okay, how many reminders should be sent but have not yet been sent? Okay, and how many reminders have been sent but we haven't heard from the appointment yet, or heard from the patient rather yet. So we have one, we've added in a new appointment after the reminders were queued to go out. Okay, and so that little red mark there, the 1 out of 3 appointments, is giving us a heads up. Hey, you added in a new appointment. If we go here and look under not sent, Jackie Demo Guy's reminder, you added in, it was after we scheduled to send out that reminder text messages. She's not going to get the reminder message. Do you want to go ahead and resend it for these missing patients? So the quick takeaway here is this widget is very, very helpful to keep track of how many reminders you've sent out, how many patients have clicked the little link on their reminder message to confirm their appointment. If we want to, we can give them the option of canceling their appointment or requesting it to be canceled from that same reminder message, or asked for someone to call them and talk about the appointment. There's the link that'll go out on each of those messages, and when they click the link, it takes them straight to a page with 3 very simple buttons. They can confirm, cancel if we choose to allow that, or ask someone to call them back. Okay, we can see from this widget who's done what. We can manage that. If we add in appointments and sneak them in after the scheduled time has elapsed to send out that reminder, we can do it manually, or we can follow up on people that have not yet confirmed. So here's some reminders that have been sent out that we haven't received a response back. We can start calling them manually and saying, hey, we haven't heard from you yet. Are you planning to come to your appointment? Okay, so these are very convenient ways to do that. Again, I'm not going to get into the setting up of all of that or scheduling all of that. If you are interested in this piece, by all means, let us know if you haven't already purchased it. We'd be happy to get that coordinated for you. And when we set it up for you, so once you make that add-on purchase for Practice Studio, it's a monthly service we can offer in addition to the regular Practice Studio. We'll help you get it configured. We'll train you in detail on how to use it and so on. Just want to make you aware of those capabilities. Okay, over here to the right, we have the online portal. Okay, and again, likewise, this is a method that the patient can communicate with the clinic in a secure way. Okay, one of the things that the reminders can do is push the patients to the portal to avoid any extra charges or whatnot from the Verizon or whomever for sending extra text messages back and forth, and to protect that communication, because anything that's communicated over text message is not encrypted. and therefore is not HIPAA compliant if it's protected health information. Okay, so any of that type of detailed information that's going between you and the patient from a HIPAA perspective should really go through a secure channel. That channel is our online portal. We have a website, www.patientwebportal, that the patient can go to. They can, if you choose to, they can get to their past chart encounters on that portal, and they can send and receive messages to you in the clinic through that online portal. Any message sent from a patient to your clinic will land right here in the online portal widget. We can click, we can see what the message is. Obviously, for real use, you'd want this a little bigger so you can read a little bit easier. You can also reply to that message and say whatever we want to. Okay, right there. Okay, so we can reply or send a new message, okay, through the portal. In both of those cases, the patient would be notified via text message and email. I just got a little buzz on my hip since this is attached to my particular information, letting me know that, hey, we have a secure message on the portal. Gives us a little link as a patient. We can click on it and go see what that secure message is. So from a clinical perspective, it's a convenient way to communicate back and forth with the patient in a secure way. That widget is how we accomplish that. Okay. Last thing I really want to look at here before we're done for the day is checking a patient out. So we've seen how to check a patient in to indicate a patient is physically in the clinic. If we come up to our regular dashboard, we can see everyone who's physically checked in from our Patients in Clinic widget. Okay, and that's showing you those 3 patients you saw me check in earlier from the appointment book. You can see that the green one is that established patient. We can see at a glance what that is because of the color. Okay, and so on. The last step before these patients exit typically will be to check them out. So if I click on any of these cards, it's going to pull up the patient summary. And from this, I can get to check out right here. The same thing is available if I come up to Quick Launch, pull up a patient. So we'll pick up that same patient. Notice that same summary pops down, a little bit smaller in this case, but same options, and we can get to check out. Okay, when we pick check out, that's going to take us to the checkout page. Okay, that lets us tell the system that the patient is exiting, that they're leaving the clinic. Okay, this is an important step. If you do nothing more than come to checkout and come down to the bottom and say complete checkout, okay, that at least tells the software when the patient physically left the clinic, okay, which is helpful to have from a reporting perspective. However, there are a lot of other nice things that are available right here from this folder. What we found was oftentimes when the patient is exiting a clinic, there's a very common set of tasks you're having to do with that patient as a front desk person, and we're trying to make all of those available, or as many as possible available right here for you as they exit. So common things we can see here. First off, what's their insurance coverage? Do they have an outstanding balance? We can see here at the top right. Nope, they don't. Okay, what are today's transactions? So if the provider is adding their own charges, as soon as you pull this up, you'll see what charges are available right here and what payments have been made so far today and how much we need to collect. Okay, all that in summary is available right there. Okay, down below, we can see some other reminders. Okay, when is their next appointment? Hey, just so you remember, Tuesday the 21st at 2, we have your next appointment. We can actually click on that and get a little printout, that same future appointments printout to give to them, or we can give them a card for their next appointment. Okay, either one right there. That's pretty common as they're exiting to remind them when they're coming next time. We can give them a receipt for whatever they've collected for today, and we can complete the checkout. Okay. The other things we can do from this same checkout page is we can get to transaction posting. Okay, we had a full training on transaction posting, so I'm not going to get into the detail here, but to actually collect the payment from the patient, we'll come down to transaction posting. We'll come and say they gave us cash for the $50, okay, and apply it as appropriate. Okay, and apply. Yep. And when we come to the visit summary page up here in the top left again, it's going to reflect, okay, there's the payment we received. Okay, likewise, if we're the ones posting the charges at the front desk in our clinic, from that same transaction posting, we could have also posted our charges either through this manual option up here or from post from fee slip right over here to the left. Again, we went through all these details on the earlier training that went through the foundational elements from the office and billing perspective. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the mechanics of how to post those transactions. The main thing I want to point out is it's available right here from checkout. So you don't have to go anywhere else to do that, because that's very, very commonly what you're doing at checking out is you're collecting the copays. You might be posting the charges. If that's what happens, if they give you a sheet of paper and it has the charges circled on it, you would come to transaction posting, post those charges. Okay, you owe us $75 for today, or your $45 copay, whatever's appropriate. Collect it, reconcile it in the system, and you're done. You don't have to remember to go anywhere else or do anything. It can be done when they physically leave, okay, which is the ideal. You can also get to the patient's ledger right here if they have questions on their balance or anything else. Just for history's sake, again, we talked about this in detail on that earlier training. I'm not going to get off on that tangent right now. Review that if you haven't, because it's very, very helpful to know how to use this ledger, but it's available. It shows all the financial history for the patient. Okay. Other things we can do from this checkout page. We have our appointment book available right there, so we need to schedule a new appointment. Okay, we can do a future appointment wizard. So we talked about this is available right here from the checkout page. So the doctor indicated that we need to see him back 4 times over the next however many weeks. We can get to that wizard we saw earlier and do it right from here. We don't have to lose our point of reference and go somewhere else. Okay. We can print excuses. So care certificate to prove they were here today, authorization for absence, and return to duties. Okay, those can be printed here. Typically, your authorization, certainly your return to duties, would be generated by the provider. But if your clinic, the provider asks you to do it at the checkout time and tells you the details, you have that available right here if appropriate. Okay, so that's a convenient way to print those common excuses that the patient might need to indicate the care that they've received or their authorization and such as they exit. So if that hasn't been given to them yet, you can do it right from there. Those are also available here under the front desk menu if you need those. That's those 3 little links right there. Okay, if you haven't gotten a patient photo for the patient, you can click that and get that right there. That's very commonly done at checkout time. It's a little bit less hectic than your check-in window, and you can set up a webcam, put some little feet or a piece of tape on the floor. Could you stand there and smile for me? And go ahead and capture that through a webcam right from here. You would just change your patient photo, acquire using webcam. It'll show you a live feed from your webcam. You can snap that picture and grab it so you have patient photos for your patients. Very, very handy. You can see the visit tracking details if you need to see how they move through your clinic. You can do insurance verification if that's appropriate. Or if it's a big balance and we're having a longer conversation, we can even get straight to creating a payment plan for the patient if that's appropriate right there. Okay, so checkout, very, very powerful. The only things we're not seeing right here, which we saw on the overview video briefly, is there is the capability from within charting for the provider to communicate to the front desk right here. So if they do have a future treatment plan indicated in charting, that can show as one of these little items down here, saying that a future appointment, the treatment plan is to see them back in 2 weeks or whatnot. It can give you a clue to that and give you a little link to go and schedule that appointment. Or they can just give you simple instructions. Please give the handout for such and such. Okay, that can show up here as well. So you want to kind of look at these and kind of glance through them so you know what the provider's communicating and asking you to do. Last step, of course, is to complete the checkout. If we haven't given a visit receipt, it'll ask us, do you want to do that? So that the patient can see what was charged and what was collected, yes or no. And then they're checked out, so they're out of the clinic. Okay, so that will conclude everything that we really wanted to go through for today's training. That really covers all the items that we typically want to be aware of how to do for that first week of using the system as a front desk person. Thank you everyone for being here, and look forward to having you on the